We outnumbered them 100 to 1, and still lost everything asterisk. The air inside the dropship reeked of sweat and gun oil. Sergeant Elias Varick tightened his grip on the overhead strap as the vessel shuddered through Otmo, his squad's laughter grating against his nerves. Think they're leaving the guns down there? Private Rook grinned, tapping his rifle like a toy. Intel says 50 hostiles. Max probably some scrap tech cultists praying we miss. Elias didn't answer. The briefing had been too clean. A derelict alien outpost on Kepler. 448B, minimal defenses, no orbital countermeasures. Command had called it a mop-up. But 20 years in the frontier wars had taught him that easy was just another word for trap. The dropship's ramp hissed open, flooding the cabin with ochre light. Outside, the planet was a graveyard of jagged black rock and creeping mist. No movement, no sound. Move out, Elias ordered. The squad fanned into the ruins, boots crunching over brittle terrain. The outpost was a cluster of dome structures, their surfaces slick with organic-looking growth. No blast marks, no bodies, just silence. Corporal Lynn, their scout, crouched to examine a fissure in the ground. "Tunnels," she murmured. "Deep ones." Rook kicked a pebble into the darkness. "Rats in a hole. We just gas 'em out." Then the ground moved. A tremor split the rock beneath them, and Elias barely kept his footing as something surged from the fissure. A spindled limb, glistening and jointed wrong, lashing out to seize Rook's ankle. The private screamed as it yanked him down. His fingers clawed at the stone before vanishing into the dark. Gunfire erupted. The squad's rounds tore into the thing. Icor sprang, but it didn't die. It rippled, the wound sealing as two more limbs erupted from the fissure. "Fall back!" Elias barked. They ran, but the ruins were alive now. Shapes peeled from the domes. Not soldiers, not machines, but nightmares of sinew and chitin moving with eerie synchronicity. Lynn's plasma torch severed one in half. The halves twitched, then scuttled forward independently. A choke transmission crackled in Elias's earpiece. Captain Hale, their orbital liaison. Asterisk Varick. What the hell's happening? Thermal shows. Asterisk. The line dissolved into static. Elias grabbed Lynn's arm, dragging her behind a shattered wall as a hail of organic spines embedded themselves where they'd stood. "They're not defending," he panted. "Asterisk, they're hurting us." Asterisk. The realization hit like a slug to the chest. The outpost wasn't a fortress. It was bait, and the things in the dark weren't outnumbered. They were asterisk counting. Static clawed at Elias's earpiece as he slammed a fresh magazine into his rifle. Around him, the squad's breathing was ragged, their armor streaked with alien ichor. Lynn crouched beside him, her plasma torch sputtering in the damp air. "They're flanking us," she hissed. Elias risked a glance over the shattered wall. The things moved like liquid, skittering on too many limbs, their forms blurring between solid and smoke. Rook was gone. The fissure had swallowed him whole. A guttural click echoed from the ruins ahead. Then another. Then hundreds. "Oh, God," whispered Private Jacks, his hands shaking on his weapon. "They're talking to each other." Elias didn't wait. Suppressing fire. Fall back to the dropship. Asterisk now. Asterisk. The squad erupted in gunfire, retreating in staggered bursts. The things didn't flinch. They adapted. Bullets that had torn through them minutes ago now glanced off hardened carapaces. One creature lunged, and Jack screamed as its barbed limbs punched through his chest plate, lifting him like a puppet before hurling him into the mist. Lynn's plasma torch flared, severing the creature's limb. It recoiled. Asterisk hesitated asterisk, then scuttled back, clicking furiously. Elias's blood ran cold. It's learning. A shrill alarm blared in his helmet. The dropship's beacon flickered on his HUD. 200 meters northwest. "Move," he roared. They sprinted through the ruins, the ground shuddering beneath them. The domes weren't structures, Elias realized. They were nests. Tendrils lashed from crevices, snatching at their ankles. Private Vasquez went down with a shriek, dragged screaming into a pulsating maw that split open beneath her. Then the sky ignited. A streak of fire tore through the clouds. Captain Hale's orbital strike, a last-ditch burn to clear their path. The shock wave sent Elias sprawling, his vision swimming. When he staggered up, the ruins ahead were molten glass. The dropship stood intact at the edge of the blast radius, its ramp open like a lifeline. Lynn hauled him forward. Asterisk go! Asterisk. They were 10 meters away when the ground exploded. A thing erupted from the rock, larger than the others. Its body a grotesque tapestry of fused limbs and human armor. Rook's armor. Its distended jaw unhinged, and the sound that ripped from it was an alien. It was Rook's voice. Asterisk, Sergeant. Help me. Asterisk. Elias froze. Lynn didn't. Her plasma torch arced, shearing through the thing's torso. It collapsed, twitching, but the voice gurgled on, now spliced with Vasquez's sobs, Jax's prayers. The dropship's engines whined to life. Elias wrenched Lynn inside as the ramp sealed behind him. The last thing he saw was the ruins writhing, the creatures piling atop one another, their bodies knitting together into something worse. The pilot didn't wait for orders. They ascended in a violent spiral, the hull screeching as spines launched from below. Elias clutched the shuddering Lynn, her face slick with sweat and ichor. They weren't defending, she whispered. The transmission crackled. Captain Hale's voice was raw. Asterisk, Elias. What the hell are they? Asterisk. Outside the viewport, the planet's surface pulsed like a heartbeat. Elias closed his eyes. They're not them anymore, he said. They're us. The dropship shuddered as it broke Atmo, leaving the nightmare planet behind. Elias slumped against the bulkhead, his glove sticky with blood that wasn't his. Across the bay, Lynn stared at her trembling hands, her breathing too controlled, too deliberate, the kind of calm that came before the storm. Captain Hale's voice crackled over the comms, sharp with static. Asterisk, Elias, report. What happened down there? Asterisk. Elias opened his mouth, but Lynn spoke first. They're not just killing us, she said, her voice hollow. They're learning from us. How we fight, how we scream. She looked up, her eyes glassy. Rook's armor, Vasquez's voice. They're collecting us. The ship lurched. A proximity alarm blared. Something was closing in. Fast. The pilot's voice was tight. We've got company. Elias lunged for the viewport. Streaks of silver and black shot through the void. Not ships, not drones, but shapes, sleek and jagged, moving like living things. One slammed into the hull with a sickening crunch. The impact sent Elias sprawling. Lynn grabbed a rifle from the rack. They're not letting us leave. The lights flickered. The dropship's AI stuttered, its voice glitching. Asterisk warning. Unknown. Bio. Signature. Detect. Asterisk. Then the power died. Darkness swallowed them. Only the emergency strips remained, casting the bay in pulsing red. Elias's pulse roared in his ears. Somewhere in the shadows, metal groaned. Something was inside the ship. Lynn pressed her back to his, rifle raised. They're faster in the dark, she whispered. A wet, clicking sound echoed from the corridor. Then another, closer. Elias tightened his grip on his weapon, aimed for the joints. The thing that slithered into the bay was neither machine nor beast. It was a grotesque amalgamation of both. Chitinous plates fused with scavenged human tech, its limbs too long, its movements too fluid. Its face was a smooth, featureless oval until it split open, revealing rows of needle teeth and a voice that wasn't its own. Elias, it rasped in Captain Hale's tone. Asterisk, you left us behind. Asterisk, Lynn fired. The plasma round tore through its chest, but it didn't stop. It lurched, its body rippling, the wound sealing shut before their eyes. Elias emptied his magazine into its legs. The thing collapsed, screeching, but the sound morphed into laughter. Human laughter. More clicks echoed from the corridor. We can't kill them, Lynn breathed. Elias wrenched open the emergency hatch. The void beyond was a yawning mouth, stars blinking cold and indifferent. We don't have to. He grabbed the writhing creature and hurled it into the black. Its scream, now a perfect mimicry of Rook's, cut off as the hatch sealed. The power surged back. The AI's voice was eerily calm. Asterisk hull breach contained. Asterisk. Lynn sagged against the wall. They'll follow us. Elias didn't answer. He stared at the viewport, where the planet Kepler 448b shrank behind them. It looked peaceful from here. Just another world. But he knew the truth. This wasn't a war. It was an infestation. And it was coming for Earth. The quarantine base smelled of antiseptic and fear. Dr. Ling Nguyen adjusted her biosuit gloves for the third time, watching through the observation glass as the dropship survivors twitched on their gurneys. The younger medic beside her tapped the diagnostic screen, his voice too loud in the sterile silence. Vitals are stable. No foreign pathogens. They're clean. Lean studied the readouts again. Too clean. The soldiers, what was left of them, had been retrieved from a derelict dropship drifting near Pluto. 2 survivors, one comatose, the other whispering about things that were dead men's faces. Standard PTSD, command had said. Standard quarantine, just protocol. Then the comatose one had started singing, not in any language they knew. Run the neuroscans again. Lean said. The medic frowned. We already. Asterisk again. Asterisk. Behind the glass, Sergeant Elias Varick's eyelids fluttered. His lips moved, forming silent words. The other survivor, Lynn, had been restrained after she clawed out her own 4 and screamed that the ship wasn't empty. The diagnostics beeped. Lean leaned in. There, buried in Elias's amygdala, microscopic filaments, branching like roots. Not a pathogen. Not a parasite. Architecture. God, the medic whispered. Is that? A knock at the door. Admiral Singh entered, her face granite. Report. Lean pointed to the scan. They've been modified at a cellular level. It's rewiring them. Singh's jaw tightened. Can we reverse it? Before Lean could answer, the lights flickered. The comms crackled with static. Then a voice, Lynn's voice, though her mouth didn't move, spilled from the speakers. Asterisk. You shouldn't have brought us home. Asterisk. Elias's eyes snapped open. His irises were wrong. Too black. Too reflective. Then the power died. In the darkness, something clattered in the vents. Lean's breath fogged her visor. The emergency lights winked on, painting the quarantine bay in bloody hues. The gurneys were empty. The glass was shattered from the inside. Singh drew her sidearm. Where are... A giggle echoed from the corridor. Not human. Not anymore. Lean understood now. The dropship hadn't carried survivors home. It had carried specimens. And they'd just been delivered. The emergency lights bathed the research facility in pulsing crimson, casting jagged shadows that seemed to twitch when Lean wasn't looking directly at them. The air stank of burnt wiring and something worse. Something organic, like wet chitin and spoiled meat. Admiral Singh's sidearm trembled slightly as she swept it across the empty corridor. Nguyen, what the hell are they? Lean swallowed hard, her gloved fingers tightening around the neural scanner. Not they, she whispered. Asterisk it. Asterisk one organism. A distributed consciousness. And it's been inside them the whole time. A shriek echoed from deeper in the facility. Human at first, then dissolving into something that clicked and gurgled. The comms were dead. The doors were locked. And somewhere in the darkness, Elias and Lynn were no longer themselves. The medic, Rivas, fumbled with his shock baton. We should fall back to. The ceiling vent above them burst open. Lynn dropped into their midst like a marionette with cut strings, her limbs splayed at impossible angles. Her head lolled back, revealing a mouth split wide. Too wide, her teeth needle-sharp and glistening. You left us behind, she rasped in Elias's voice. Singh fired. The round punched through Lynn's forehead, snapping her head back. But she didn't fall. She laughed. The wound knitting shut in seconds, tendrils of black sinew snaking across her face. Lean grabbed Rivas and ran. The hallway twisted like a living thing, the walls shuddering as if breathing. Behind them, Singh's screams cut off abruptly, replaced by a wet, crunching silence. Rivas hyperventilated beside her, their changing facility, like they changed the planet. Lean skidded to a halt at the terminal, her fingers flying over the keys. The The security feeds flickered to life, showing corridors choked with pulsating biomass. Soldiers fought and fell as their own weapons turned against them, their gear melting into the creatures' bodies upon contact. But it was Feed 27 that froze her blood. Elias stood in the central lab, his hands pressed to the glass of the specimen tanks. Inside, the floating remains of the original Kepler, 448B samples stirred, reaching for him. No, not reaching. Sinking. Rivas gagged. They're not infecting us. They're networking. A deafening crash shook the corridor. The thing that had been Lynn slithered toward them, her body elongating, her spine now an exposed ridge of quivering spines. Lynn made a decision. She slammed her fist into the quarantine override. Every door in the facility hissed open at once. Every containment unit purged. The alarms wailed as the air cycled, not to sterilize, but to vent. Rivas screamed as the decompression warning blared. "You'll kill us all." Lynn didn't flinch. She stared at Feed 27, where Elias turned slowly toward the camera, his black eyes reflecting the stars. "Better than letting it learn," she said. The last thing she saw before the void took her was the facility's outer cameras, where the biomass rippled, then went still, waiting for the next ship to dock, for the next ride home. 3 weeks had passed since Research Station Theta vented itself into the black. 3 weeks of official denials of sealed records, of admirals whispering behind closed doors. Captain Idris Vance knew the truth. He watched from the bridge of the UNSS Vigilance as the salvage team floated toward the derelict station. The station's outer hull pulsed faintly, not with light, but with something darker, a ripple like oil on water. "Life signs?" he asked. His science officer, Kess, frowned at her screen. "None. But the station's biomass has reconfigured. It's reading as one contiguous organism now." The calm crackled. The salvage team leader's voice was tight. "Captain, you need to see this." The feed from their helmet cams splashed across the main screen. The station's interior was alive. Walls had melted into fibrous tendrils. Consoles bloomed like fungal growths. And at the center of it all, half merged with the command console, was Dr. Lynn Gwynn, or what remained of her. Her torso protruded from the biomass, her arms outstretched as if crucified, her mouth sewn shut with black filaments. Vance's stomach turned. "Any movement?" "Negative," Kess whispered. "But the structure is breathing." The salvage team moved closer. Their boots stuck to the organic floor with wet thunks. One tech reached out toward Lynn, and her eyes snapped open. Black. The feed dissolved into static. On the Vigilance, alarm screamed. Kess's console lit up like a supernova. "Captain, the station just launched a..." The impact rocked the ship before she could finish. Vance grabbed the console as the artificial gravity stuttered. "Report." Kess's voice was hollow. "It's not a missile. It's a pod. Organic. It burrowed into Hangar Bay 2. The comms erupted with screams. Then gunfire. Then something laughing. Vance turned to his weapons officer. "Scorch the station. Now!" The plasma torpedoes hit dead center. The station shrieked, a sound that vibrated to the void itself, then ruptured in a bloom of viscera and flame. Silence. Kess let out a shaky breath. "It's over." Vance didn't answer. He was watching Hangar Bay 2's internal feed. The pod had split open, and the thing inside was wearing Rivas's face. It looked up at the camera and smiled. Then the feed cut out. Vance closed his eyes. They'd won the battle. But the war? The war had already begun.